Today we got an old style, first generation Marvin operating Sidelite, and I want to show you how to replace the Roto Gear and how to make the hardware more reliable. This hardware was designed for the Marvin motorized windows. So I'm going to do an aftermarket fix on this that will help it make it stay more reliable. So let's get started. So as you can see here on this particular one, it doesn't seem to be operating too well. The hardware feels real sloppy and it's not closing all the way. So in this card up here, I'm going to go ahead and post a link to a video that shows you how to adjust the hinges on the door, so you can get to that first. And at the end of the video, I'll also put a link at the end of the video that shows you how to adjust a Marvin door and the adjustable hinges. So let's go ahead and get this apart. Okay, we'll start by removing the screen, and we'll go ahead and remove this handle and cover. You just use a slotted screwdriver. Using that little set screw, it comes right off, and this pops right off. So on this particular Sidelite, this Marvin first generation Sidelite, these hardware covers are nailed on. We don't use the kerf and barb system on this one, where it has the little kerf in the wood, where it uses that little vinyl piece that holds on there. So you will have to take a putty knife in here, and this seam between the frame and here, you're going to have to put your putty knife in there to get this broken free. Someone already pulled this one off, so we'll go ahead and take this off and we'll nail it back on when we're done. Okay, with that cover removed, we can already see that something is obviously wrong here. This should not look like this. It actually should look more like this one. This is a brand new one. And you can see here that this bottom keeper is hitting this. That means this is out of time. Sometimes it doesn't clear that, so we need to go ahead and replace this hardware. Okay, simple enough. We move this little thing like that. That comes undetached like that. So the next thing to do is make sure that the door with the Roto Gear off of it clears the opening and that it operates fine. If it does not, then you may have to adjust your hinges up or down depending on what you need. You should be able to tell by the reveal or the gap around this door. See how it's pretty consistent all the way around? And then on this side as well. So if this gap here was really wide, by opening the door, you could adjust the door for square by bringing the door in this way or this way by turning this screw. And then underneath the barrel here, up is up and down is down, which if you watch my previous video on how to adjust these doors, you can see how that is done. So one of the things about the first generation Marvin operating Sidelite, it has a built-in locking mechanism. So when you crank the window shut or the Sidelite shut, this bar slides up in here and locks this in place. One of the things you really got to be mindful of is to make sure that this keeper lines up with this. I have seen in the past where this is too low, this keeper is too low, and it hits here, or I've seen where this keeper is bent, and you can just bend it back. If this gets bent, you can just take a pair of vice grips or a crescent wrench, and you can move and bend this over if you need to. Obviously, you may want to put something on there to protect it so you don't damage your paint there. So now that we know that that clears the top, we're going to check the bottom, make sure it clears the bottom. Okay, it clears the bottom. If it didn't, we would either file this off or do that, or you can even just move that up if you need to. It's maybe just a hair too far that way. We can just try to bend that a little bit. There we go, like that. Now let's go ahead and put the Roto Gear on. Okay, we got our new Roto Gear. We'll go ahead and make sure that this little pin goes in this slot here. Then to get to these other holes here, go ahead and move this gear. So before you hook this back up, it's very important to note that this tack needs to be here. If that is not there, this hardware is not going to work properly. When you crank this shut, this tack pushes this little arm in to allow the locking mechanism to work. So if you don't have something there, you need to put something there. And we'll hook this up. That releases the locking mechanism and allows the hardware to lock. 2 full revolutions, just like that. So 2 full revolutions before it opens, and then you open it, and then 2 full revolutions for it to lock. So when we crank it open and we crank it shut, you'll see how it works. Now that we got that back together, I want to do something to make this hardware more reliable. And I'm going to do that by using this spring I picked up from Home Depot. Just a standard spring you would probably use on a screen door or something like that. I'm going to cut it to size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach it to this tie bar that's here. And it's especially important on the other side because the way gravity works with this mechanism needs to be in time with this little notch. This little notch here has to go into this little thing in order for it to work properly. Because this was designed for a motor where the window's either open or closed, some people don't like their side lights open all the way. And what I found out in the field is sometimes people just want to open their side light a few inches. Well, sometimes if there's not tension on this tie bar, this part doesn't work properly. So this has to be cycled properly, and hopefully I'll show you on the other side what I'm talking about. So we're going to go ahead and attach this spring to this tie bar to keep constant tension on it. So on a side light where the hinges are on the left from the outside looking in, the hinges are over here, you're going to want to put this spring on this tie bar where there's constant tension pulling down on it. On the other side where the hinges are on the right from the outside looking in, you're going to want constant tension pulling up. So let's go ahead and install that. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this spring, and I'm probably going to cut about 3 inches or so. We only need a spring about that big. So I'm choosing this area behind the hardware cover where it's a nice big area, right in about the center here. And keep in mind that this bar goes up and down. So if you drill your hole for your spring up here, it's probably going to hit that or down here. So we'll just go a few inches here. And since we want constant tension to go down, I'm going to drill a hole right in this tie bar. This putty bar in here so I don't go all the way through the wood. I'm going to drill a hole here. I'm going not quite on the center, but just off to the center, 1/8 inch. Okay, I drilled all the way through it. I'm going to take this spring and open it like that, move this tie bar out and put that spring through the back side of it. Take our vice grips here and we're just going to bend that down. Okay, now that we got that hooked in there, we're going to go ahead and put a screw over here with some tension on this. Going about that far, that's probably 5 inches maybe. Okay, I'm just using a panhead screw. We're going to hook that on there like that. I'm going to squeeze that together. Oops. Okay, I messed up as you saw. I need more tension than that. Take that out. So as you can see where I was a little off, I needed to make sure this was open. I haven't done this in a while, so we're going to go ahead and move that down. Make sure it's about 5 inches on that spring. So we'll go right about there. There we go, like that. Now, when we lock it, as you see how much tension gets on that spring, and when we unlock it, it's still under tension. That way, the crank will always work properly. And this will give you a lot more reliability. So now it's time to put the hardware cover back on. Remember, we need to nail it. We'll use some 2-inch brad nails. You do need to be mindful of how thin this wood is. So when you put your nail through here, you need to make sure it's relatively straight because you don't want to have a blowout one way or blowout the other way. One of the things about these Roto Gears, it's always right to open it and left to lock it. So we got it in the lock position, the hardware covers. We got a nice tight spot here. Go ahead and nail that on. Okay, we're in the lock position because it won't turn anymore. We'll go ahead and put this cover on and we'll make sure that this lines up this way. Be mindful not just to throw it on anyway and tighten the screw or it won't be lined up. Just like that. We'll tighten a little set screw. There you go. Remember, it's always right to open. It's always left to lock. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. Crank it open, the hardware cover. We're going to take this cover. This one's still nailed on, so we'll go ahead, and I got a little trick for that. So if you can't get your putty knife in here because this gap's too tight, if you gently put your pry bar in here and just slightly pull out. Of course, if this was painted, you may want to take a utility knife and score these lines, but we got a little gap now, so we'll gently remove these covers. Okay, it looks like I managed to pull this off without having any nails stuck in here. If there are any nails stuck in here, just pull the nails out. I try to leave these nails in because sometimes I can just take these and line them up with the existing holes, and then that way you don't have to put more nails in here when you staple the new one on. So we'll see how that works. So let's go ahead, make sure that this is adjusted, everything works fine on it. It doesn't look like I need to replace the Roto Gear, so we'll go ahead and just put that spring fix on there. Here's a perfect example why we're putting this spring on here. Take a look at this right here. See how this little notch here is in this spot here? See watch what happens when I'm throwing the gear. Oh, see now that everything's out of time. Okay, with this closed and locked, I'm gonna mark a spot right here. That way I know when I unlock it how much room I got. Remember, I don't wanna make the same mistake I did on the other side. So right about here, I'm gonna go ahead and drill a hole. Okay, got all the way through. And we're gonna take about 3 inches from this spring here. So we're gonna go ahead and get that spring behind that hole, like that. I'm gonna go ahead and move that up. Okay, since I'm in the locked position, I'm gonna go ahead and put extra tension on there. I got that probably strung about 7 inches. Just bring that on there. There you go. Now that gives you 100% reliability. See now, when you open the window, even if you just open it a couple inches, it engages that part there. So you can open it just a few inches and then it'll be a lot more reliable. Okay, then we got that all together. Let's go ahead and pop these on. I'm gonna try to head and line up these holes with these nails with the holes and see if we can pop it on without having to re-nail it. Well, there you have it. That's how I repair a first generation Marvin Sidelite. And if you found this video informative, please consider hitting the subscribe button below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.